Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the Higher Grounds podcast. Brother Matthew and I around the table today, and we look forward to just sharing a little bit of our vast, deep wisdom with the world. And there's nobody better to do this than Matthew Tucker and Andy Wells. And I promise you, what you hear here, you won't hear anyplace else. Isn't that right? We forgot to turn the microphone on.
Yeah, you ain't gonna hear this nowhere else.
You know, you're not going to hear that anywhere else. Mm-hmm. But we're glad that you've dropped in to join us around the table. We had the young Bucks on last week.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they did a good job.
They did until Noah wouldn't look at his phone.
Yeah. See, Matthew was texting him an outline to help him sound smart. And Noe was just clued in on me. You know, he didn't want to look nowhere else. And Matthew was waving, going, get your phone. And Noah didn't. He didn't. Why do you think he did that?
I guess it wasn't Sonic.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Joe Nathan looked at his phone and said, I got a text message from Sonic.
That's right. Jonathan. Yes. Yeah, I think it was popcorn chicken or something.
Popcorn chicken shrimp.
Yeah. He said something about, hey, they're going to give me $1.49 popcorn chicken. So
popcorn chicken shrimp.
I'm telling you, you know he's a Baptist preacher when he gets excited about chicken.
Yes, sir.
Right?
You got that. That's how you know he called.
That's right.
You said a while ago you didn't know if he's called or not.
No.
As soon as he said chicken after the
yes,
camera went
I
off,
know he's called. He's called.
He's called.
You know how you know you're a preacher, right?
Talk to me.
You wake up one morning.
You don't want to go to work.
You don't want to go to work, and you have a hankering for chicken.
Yeah, well, that's what they say.
And you know you're a called preacher.
Baptist preacher.
Baptist preacher. Yep. Yeah. Hey, I was in Santa Fe. Dyslexia kicked in. I was in
Santa. You got to be reading for dyslexia to kick in.
Oh no, it kicks in all the time. I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico recently, and around the corner from the church where I was at was a Lutheran church, flying the old rainbow flag up on the flagpole over the Lutheran church.
Yep.
What about that?
It's horrible.
I don't think I'll be attending there.
No, I probably ain't going either.
I won't be attending there.
Not unless they're having communion.
Communion.
They drank real wine.
So is that why you want to go to the Lutheran church?
You call wanting to go to the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm trying to get you to go to the Lutheran church.
I respect the Jehovah's Witnesses more than that.
Yeah, I told you about a lady in my church talking to me on the front porch about the rainbow flag and transgenders and stuff.
No.
Yeah, Miss Barbara, she'll probably watch, but she come up one Sunday morning and she just found out that
now don't get us kicked off the facing books.
Yeah, she just found out that the Lutheran church and some of those Methodist churches are
doing that.
LGBTQ, RSTUV, yeah,
RSV,
LMNOP.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so
all the alphabet.
She was upset about it, and I was like, well, that's been going on for years now.
Yeah, we had a missionary with us on a couple Sundays ago who is going to the country of Denmark. And he's speaking about, how liberal-minded Denmark actually is. He said they legalized same-sex marriage in Denmark in like 1958.
Wow.
It's been legalized that long in that country. A very liberal mindset. But you know what? The power of the gospel can reach through all that.
Yes, sir.
The gospel is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. And it's amazing how that Noah now gets text messages and looks at them so fast. I heard it go off, and then he cued in on we got a studio audience, and Noah came back for today's episode, and he's sitting in the studio audience helping Joe Nathan with the technical aspects of the recording of the podcast.
So far, they seem like they're doing a better job this time than I did last time.
Yeah, you kind of missed it. You were the struggle was real. The struggle was real.
On Monday mornings, the struggle.
Speaking of struggling,
you just told the boys they had to pronunciate right.
No, I did not. I said enunciate.
Enunciate.
Yes.
What's the difference in the P and the E?
Well, the E is earlier in the alphabet than the P is.
Fifth letter.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So You can count as long as you got 2 hands and 2 feet.
If I got to take the socks off, I will.
Well, I'd rather you didn't.
Okay.
I'd rather you didn't. Matthew is the pastor of the Gordon Heights Baptist Church, as we always say. And how's things on the hill?
Things been going good. Everything.
You know, I had a great time being with you a few weeks ago.
I enjoyed it too. You got me last time. You're going to get me this time. Yes, sir. He did a tremendous job.
I appreciate Matthew, and he's in the area, and he and I are neighbors, and we get together and fellowship from time to time, and so I call him quite regularly, and I just got to make sure you don't leave the community. You can't leave.
Did we tell them about the day you pulled up in my yard in a police car?
No,
we didn't tell them that.
No, we didn't.
No, I don't know. I've been saved since I was 17. I've been preaching going on 18 years now.
Yeah.
So Brother Andy, he decides he wants to pull up in my front yard in the sheriff's car. And so I stand up, and Stephanie said, "What's the police doing here?" So I stand up, and I'm thinking, this honestly come through my mind, I'm finna hit this back door.
That hits your mind. You figure they finally figured out what you'd done.
I was fixing the RUNOFT.
Run off.
Run off.
Of course, most folk know I work at the sheriff's office and part time, and so I was in Matthew's neighborhood, and I thought I need to ask Matthew about something, and so I just zipped in the yard, and I thought Stephanie was going to run. Actually,
yeah, we both fit to run. Somebody need to tell him.
Bonnie and Clyde.
Bonnie and Clyde.
That's right.
Yeah. Now my phone's ringing. Noah, should I check it, or you think I'm good?
He's probably calling you, telling you what to say. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the stress and the pressure that pastors feel and what they have to deal with and what they have to go through. There's a lot of preachers who their ministries are cut short because they just simply can't handle the stress and pressure that comes their way for various reasons. I knew of a preacher years ago who he got under this burden to build a ministry like a First Baptist Church in Hammond or a Crown College type of ministry, and he was overwhelmed with the pressure to do that, and he worked so feverishly to gain the approval of those kinds of people to build that kind of ministry that he literally had a debilitating stroke that took him out of the ministry altogether. And I've told a lot of young guys, if you get to the place and point where the ministry is so stressful and it is so burdensome to you to perform and to impress people,
yes, sir,
you're in it for the wrong reason.
Yes, sir.
And there's no greater joy than being in the ministry for the sake of Christ and having Christ work His ministry through your life. There's no greater joy than that. But a lot of times I feel like men, their motives are wrong, but they don't realize it because motives are deceptive. They're in this to do something to please God, to do something to impress God, when God is just wanting them to relax and enjoy Him and then allow Him to do the work. And I see that as a big problem. But you've been pastoring, I don't know, 7 years or whatever, 8 years.
8 years, yes, sir.
There at Gordon Heights. And you have developed a lot of friendships. You're in different, texting groups that discuss scriptures, and you have a lot of young men that are your peers that are within 10 years of you, one way or the other.
Yes, sir.
That you fellowship with, or text with, or talk to. Do you find a lot of them are stressed with problems and pressures of the ministry?
Yeah, I would say some are. It's as a younger pastor, I think the stress of the ministry is different. The first few years of your pastoring.
I would agree. Yeah.
The first few years pastoring, the pressure really wasn't a lot of folks that was at the church or problems in the church, because the first few years the people's getting to know the preacher's getting to know the people. You're coming acquainted with another, and you're filling each other out, learning one another, connecting with one another. So the problems early on, I would think, what I faced was wanting to succeed. Like looking back now, been at the church 8 years, kind of going into it thinking, well, hopefully by this time next year, we would either advance or
we'll have X amount of
X
people.
amount of people.
We'll be planning to build
Yes, sir.
this
Yes, sir.
or that, or
and then you're not getting those expectations, and that leads to discouragement. And I did learn that early on in pastoring. The Lord showed me some things. I learned a lot of stuff the first 3-4 years of pastoring, and one of the main lessons I've learned about dealing with pressures of everybody being at the church on time, everybody being at church in their place, and you get frustrated if you keep looking at folks because they don't come, because it's just the nature of the beast.
Yes.
You just got some folks that just think they ain't never going to get in on the program, they ain't never going to be faithful to church, and they're going to be hit and miss. And early on, dealing with those pressures in the ministry, I would take it out on the folks that were there.
Yes.
And one Sunday morning, I was preaching. And I was actually probably more in the flesh than I was in the spirit,
preaching to people who weren't even there.
Weren't even there, and the Holy Ghost said they ain't here, and they definitely ain't gonna get the CD.
Right.
And so
that's the truth.
The Holy Ghost showed me that, and that's some of the pressures earlier on in the ministry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I remember feeling that, and I remember early on in the ministry standing in the pulpit trying to count how many people were here and try to figure out who was missing and why and all of that.
Yes, sir.
And I don't want it to sound as if I'm apathetic to that now.
Yes, sir.
But I cannot help the people that are not there.
That's exactly right.
And so I have to concentrate the efforts. And when God gave me the message for the Sunday morning or the Sunday night or the Wednesday night, we still have Wednesday night service. You believe that?
Yes, sir.
So
what
about that? Even Sunday night. So I was talking to a preacher the other day, and he was asking, he said, you stay pretty busy. And I said, yeah, I do. I said, I preach Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I have a podcast. I work on it every single day. We produce a 30-minute episode once a week. I do this, that, and the other. And he said, I only preach once a week, and I feel like I can't get it all done. So y'all come walk in our shoes a day or two.
Yeah.
But early on, I got diverted there, chased a little rabbit. But
yes, sir.
I got a place where I'm not apathetic, but God gave me the message. He knew who was going to be there before he ever gave me the message. So he gave it to me for a specific purpose and for specific people, and evidently it wasn't them. Yeah. So that's missing. So I'm not going to waste my time on them. It's not that I'm not going to love them.
Right.
Would you say that the vast majority of Christians that we will regularly minister to in our churches, members even, are nominal Christians?
I think so.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would
agree.
Yes, sir.
It's like the illustration I gave recently about the 500.
Yes, sir.
Saw Jesus after his resurrection, 500 brethren or 500 Christians, and yet when it come to the seriousness of getting the Holy Spirit,
yes, sir,
on the day of Pentecost, there was only 120 that had gathered. So the vast majority of the church is not going to go into Canaan land, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
The vast majority are going to stay in the wilderness.
Right.
And you still have to minister to those people in the wilderness.
You do. You still got to minister.
Is that frustration to you?
It gets a little frustrating, and I've talked to pastors, and it's more frustrating them than it is me. I use the ministering part as an opportunity to minister.
Right.
Say you got a family in your church. They come probably once every once every 6 months, just to keep their name on a roll. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to come a lot. But then you got children that's getting married. You got their grandparents that you're going to bury.
Yeah.
And some I can tell, talking to some preachers, that frustrates them more than others, because man, so and so ain't been to church in 6 months. Now somebody, I got a phone call 12 o'clock at night, and they want me to, and I can tell that gets people frustrated some. Right. It's not me as much, because I just like to try to minister to people, and I just try to help them, and not that I want to say, hey, I want to minister to you so you'll come to my church, but we went through the book of Joshua several years ago. It took us about a year to get through it, and the very first thing that the Lord showed me when Moses passed and Joshua come on the scene, that Joshua had to earn favor with
Right.
the people. And once he
Right.
in favor with the people, he was able to minister to them.
Right.
And so God started dealing with that in my heart early. And so that's what I try to do if I got to marry or bury, whatever the case may be, phone call, hospital visit. I'm asking the Lord, give me favor with this family.
Yeah,
That
and you
way I
use
can
it as
minister to
right.
them.
You
Yeah.
use it as an opportunity
Yes, sir.
to
Yes, sir.
reach ones you haven't
Yes, sir.
reached.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
and you do that in your community, or you should as
sir.
well. I minister to a lot of people in our community who will never darken the doors of my
Right.
church. And if you're unwilling to minister in the community to people that you'll never reap the benefits of a tithe or an offering
Yes,
or
sir.
their attendance,
Yes,
if you're
sir.
unwilling to do that, then I think you're really unwilling to minister as God would have you to.
Yes, sir.
There are a lot of people, lots and lots of people that Jesus ministered to in his 3.5 years of earthly ministry that never came along with him, and we never heard about.
Right.
You only hear about a few,
Yes, sir.
the Peters and the Jameses and the Johns and the Mary Magdalens and the handful. The vast majority you never hear about,
No,
or
sir.
even never see.
Right.
But a lot of that can put pressure and stress on a man to the place and point where it drives him insane.
Yes, sir.
And I think it is an exacerbating means by which a lot of men get out of the ministry.
Yes, sir.
They just cash
Right.
their chips in and say, I'm done with this. I'm
Yes, sir.
quitting.
Yes, sir.
So does Satan crawl on your shoulder with pressure and stress about ministering to people?
Yes, sir, he does. And usually it's when I don't get the outcome I expect.
Which should be regularly.
It should be regular. Yeah, it is regular.
In these days, anyway.
Yeah, it is. We just went. We're going through currently right now on Sunday nights on Book of 1 Timothy, and that was the outline I tried to send Noah earlier.
Yeah.
To help him
On last week's
episode.
yeah.
Yes, sir. And Paul's telling Timothy to be a good minister.
Yeah.
And he's giving him, he putting the believers in remember some things, and then
Right.
he goes through the text that y'all went through. And I just thought we're going to battle burnouts. I mean, you're not going to be able to minister long and be effective with not battling burnouts in the ministry. Study preparation, preaching, traveling and preaching, going to meetings, funerals, weddings. So you're going to battle burnouts, and there's going to be pressures of the ministry, pressures not to say to perform, but pressures to say, you know what, you got your family that you still got to spend adequate time with, that you don't want to neglect your family. If I neglect my wife, I'm out in the ministry anyway. And so
Right.
you got to try to balance between those. So you got pressures coming from both sides, the
You
church,
do.
the family.
Yeah, you
and
do.
you're going to battle burnouts. And we talked about before we shot the podcast on men of God in the ministry battling burnouts. And research tells us anywhere between 1,500 to 1,700 preachers right now are battling burnouts to the point they leave the ministry. 91% of those say that they're battling burnouts, but 17% said they already burnt to a crisp.
Yeah.
So there's going to be pressures in the ministry, and that's why when you tell preachers you're announcing you call to preach, and I know people say, well, I talked to my pastor and he said if I can do anything else, do it, because there's
Yeah.
pressures and battles into the ministry. And I've heard preachers make statements that it'd be just easier to just go get an 8-hour-a-day job, 9-to-5 job, and go back to work than it would be try to stay in the ministry.
Well, and then you've got those who are working the
Both.
8-hour
Yeah.
and 12-hour-a-day jobs and then having to pastor people.
Yeah.
The statistics I read said that 92% of pastors report working more than 70 hours a week.
Yes, sir.
And we've given these statistics on here before.
Yes, sir.
And you generally are working 7 days a week.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you are. I'm
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming
Yes, sir.
because
Yes,
I know your schedule and I know the way that
sir.
you study, and so there's very little leisure time.
Yeah, they are.
I don't take days off. I mean, I don't. I have times off.
Yes,
You know,
sir.
I'll take an hour or two here or 4 or 5 hours there and catch a little fishing trip here and there.
Yes, sir.
But every day is employed in the ministry in some way. But I work generally 80 hours plus a week.
Yeah.
And start at 4 in the morning and end when I collapse at the end of the day. And that's nearly every single day of my life. And so it's not uncommon for people that are that involved in working anything, let alone something where you're being spiritually attacked.
Yes, sir.
And, and having to gain the favor of people. It's not uncommon for someone like that to burn out.
Right.
Yeah. 75% of pastors had reported in this survey that they had a significant stress-related crisis at least once that physically affected their health.
Yeah.
Heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, those types of things. Stress brings on physical ailments. And so a lot of preachers, and truthfully, a lot of preachers are overweight.
Yes, sir.
A lot of preachers don't exercise, they don't eat right. And a lot of preachers are experiencing major health troubles in their life. And much of it has to do with the schedule they work, and much of it has to do with the fact that they're under stress, which makes the problem worse.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we was talking about people battling burnouts and folks leaving. 38% of the ones who have not left the ministry are right now contemplating leaving the ministry.
Yeah.
So that's 38% of them. 61% of the men who have left the ministry, their church has forced them to. And I preach these stats and statistics at our church on Sunday night, going through on 1 Timothy chapter 4, and I found out the number one reason why a lot of pastors battle burnouts and leave the ministry, the number one reason I could find out was that the church won't go in the same direction as the pastor.
Yeah.
Yep.
They refuse to.
Yes, sir.
Or they'll let him do it, and they'll sit back and watch him.
Yes, sir.
Knowing he's
pulls
going to
all the
fail.
way. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And which is wrong. I mean, it's just terribly wrong. The Bible said that we're to follow that pastor's faith. That's what the Bible said in Hebrews 13. I am, as a member, to follow the faith of my
Yes,
pastor.
sir.
In other words, what he expresses and the way he lives his life is what I ought to follow. And that's
Yes,
what
sir.
I'll answer to God for.
Yes, sir.
50% of pastors do not believe that they're capable of meeting their job requirements,
Yes.
and that much has been put on them. I was told the other day about a local church in our area who had some issues with their pastor, and their church constitution says that they are a deacon-run church. That's what their church constitution says in so many words.
Yes, sir.
And they went to their pastor, who's no longer there, and said, your job and responsibility is not only to preach to us and to teach us, but your job and your obligation, your responsibility is to be here before anyone else is, to make sure the lights are turned on, to make sure that the heat is adjusted, to make sure that the air conditioning is adjusted, and to make sure that after every fellowship, you and your family make sure this place is clean before you go home.
Yeah.
I mean, they put custodial
In the
duty.
bylaws.
Yes. And
Well, if you think about it,
it's crazy.
You think about it, I do the same thing at our church, but it's not in the bylaws. Most of the time I'm the first one there.
Right.
I cut the lights on. I make
Right.
sure the heat and air is where it's supposed to be. Usually we're the last ones to leave. We lock the door, close everything up.
Yeah, but you're not being ordered
We're not
around
being
like a
ordered to do it.
slave.
No, not like slaves. No, we take a week out the month. Me and Miss Stephanie clean the church, and
Right.
But I understand what I'm saying. See, there's more to pastoral work than you said something about working a while ago. 60, 70, 80 hours a week. There's folks watching and they're going to say they call that work. Yes, work. Studying 40, 50 hours a week just to preach 3 hours a week. There's more behind the scenes than that you see in the pulpit.
You'll ever know.
You ever know? Praying, studying, getting up early, staying up late,
Right.
trying to make sure you
Right.
got yourself prepared, and
Counseling
people. And a lot of the counseling now, I don't know how you. I know you probably. There's some counsel sessions we sit across the table one for another, but here the past several counseling sessions I've done either been by FaceTime or on the phone.
Well, I was counseling a man early this morning. My days sometimes start in the 6 o'clock hour with people, counseling people in the 6 o'clock hour up till late at night.
Yeah.
And he was asking, this particular gentleman was asking me how I counseled. I said, well, a lot of the counseling that I do is by phone. And it's talking to people all over the country, not
People
just
you've never
people
seen.
in my church. Yes, sometimes.
Well, just like last night, we get coming down the road, coming home from church. I was on the phone with a preacher friend of mine. We was talking about how services went. I had a phone call while I was on the phone with him on the way home. I got off the phone with that gentleman after counseling and talking with last night over an hour. It was 1 o'clock in the morning before I got to bed last night.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've even, because of the podcast, I noticed the other day that I don't check Messenger very often. And so when I wasn't checking Messenger, and I just don't do it. I mean, I'm a technological idiot, I guess, sometimes. But as I was not checking it, there was a guy that sent some comments in, and I had missed them because I just don't check that.
Yes, sir.
And he had taken offense or thought that I was ignoring. I wasn't ignoring
Yes,
him,
sir.
and I'm not saying he got huffy, but I think he was offended a little bit that I hadn't. Well, I mean, we've got more stuff going on in our ministries, and we've got more stuff going on with the podcast of the church, and we've got various churches that are involved in the podcast ministry, and we have hours. I mean, 80 hours a week working is more than most people work.
Yes, sir.
And folks need to realize and understand that, but very few people do.
Right.
And one of these are some of the things that bring stress and pressure to pastors. And as you said earlier, you have 7,000 plus pastors that are quitting every year. They're quitting, and then you've got thousands of churches that are closing their doors every year because they don't have pastors. I know even in our local area, which is Chesterfield County, South Carolina, Lancaster County, South Carolina, there are literally I wouldn't dare say 100 churches in our area that don't even have pastors,
Yes, sir.
and they can't find them. Right. And it is simply because of a lot of men are just leaving ministry because of pressure.
Yes, sir. Hey, we said you was talking to the younger men last episode about people in the ministry.
Right.
80% of the men who are in the ministry right now will not be in 10 years.
Yeah, that's an amazing statistic.
It is. 83% of pastors' wives want them to leave the ministry.
Well, I was reading a statistic that 1/4 of pastors' wives say that they view their husband's work schedule in the ministry as being a source of conflict. In other words, fighting between husband and wife.
Yes, sir.
Inside their home. So you've got a pastor whose family is supposed to be an example of leadership to the other families, but their families are barely holding together. And you have pastors' families that are on the verge of divorce,
Yes, sir.
regularly because of this stress and this pressure that they are feeling.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing.
It is.
And a lot of people don't realize it and believe this or not. And I'm about to close, and these are very disturbing. But 51% of pastors, now these are all denominations lumped together.
Yes, sir.
But 51% of pastors say that internet pornography is a temptation to them. 30% of pastors are functionally addicted to internet pornography.
Wow.
And 15% say that they have engaged in inappropriate physical, sexual behavior that is inappropriate with someone in their ministry.
Wow.
So, and a lot of the pressure and stress and home conflict is pushing these men outside the bonds of marriage.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes it has to do with their counseling with people who are in a mess.
Yes.
And then they get tempted and drawn in. And I'm not making any justifications. I'm just saying to our listening audience,
Yes, sir.
much prayer needs to be made for your pastor because you have no idea
Exactly right.
what he and his family are going through. Hey, think on these things. Have a great day. And as always, you keep pressing on the upward way. We'll see you next week.